Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing a book that I actually read for a book club that I'm part of, but I decided to give it a review here even though, as you'll find out, it wasn't really my most favorite, and it also wasn't a book that I picked, which is kind of why I felt bad or didn't know if I was going to review it, because it wasn't a book that I picked, so I didn't know if I should talk about it. But I guess I will, because if someone else is interested in reading this book or has any comments about this, then I would definitely like to hear about it. So this book was selected for my book club, and that is Murder in Michigan's Upper Peninsula by Sonny Longtine. Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the geography of the United States, one of the states is Michigan, and it's divided into two parts, an upper and a lower peninsula, and the upper peninsula is right on, Lake Superior is between Upper Peninsula and Canada, and it's a lot of woods. It's very rural, not a lot of cities up there. So yeah, this is kind of then just like a history of that area, specifically in regard to crimes. So the book is kind of organized in chronological order, and the stories aren't really that long. So this kind of starts with the oldest one, which is 1858, and each one is only, like, this one is like 5 pages long, so they're not really that long. They're kind of just a short, it feels like a summary. You're reading a summary instead of a sensationalized account, which I did appreciate, because I don't really like true crime. I either, one, find it way too scary, and then I can't use the bathroom at night because I got way too wound and now I'm convinced someone's in my living room, and it's not good. I have absolutely no fear tolerance for this sort of stuff. I get really scared with true crime. The part of any sort of aspect of maybe true crime that I do kind of like reading about isn't really the crime or anything about like the killer or the victims or anything like that. I like reading about how like FBI or law enforcement or whatever is able to find the killer, or the person who committed the crime. It doesn't have to be murder. I really enjoy like learning how they piece the clues together, or who they called, or that sort of stuff is very interesting to me. So I do enjoy that aspect of it, and unfortunately there wasn't a whole lot of that in here, and that's because way back in the day it was more or less just, hey, where were you? That doesn't line up. Okay. The law enforcement investigation is very different back then, which I also knew from reading another true crime book that I think I also reviewed on this channel, so I'll link it if I'm correct. So definitely the way they investigate crimes has changed, and you can see that when you get into the more recent crimes, which were like in the early 2000s, actually, some of these early crimes. But the ones from like 1848, I feel like you either had a confession, or someone confessed to someone else, or someone like had the gun that was used to shot. Like, it was, you had to have something very clear and convincing. They weren't doing a lot of DNA evidence back in the 1840s, so that aspect was kind of interesting, but they didn't go too much in depth, so I was like, okay. The aspects of this that I found interesting, because I clearly did not like the true crime. It wasn't too scary, but it also wasn't my cup of tea. So the aspects that I did like about it was kind of learning about these places and these logging towns. So if you were to visit the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is usually just termed UP as an abbreviation, so I'll just start using that. So if you were to visit the UP, there isn't a lot of, like, these logging towns, especially when you're talking about now, are just basically nowadays just a wide spot in the road with a gas station and a blinking yellow light. That's basically all you're getting at some of these places, because logging has definitely slowed down, so those people would have moved on, and now there's not as much activity, so the towns have kind of died. I actually believe this was a hotel at one of those places that just is now a blinking light and a gas station. So these towns now have way fewer residents, but way back in the day they were a lot more active, so it's really interesting to read and hear about some of these places that, I mean, the most exciting thing these days might be, I don't know, like, they're very quiet locales, and way back in the day they were just these swinging wild places with the loggers and the women who followed the logging camps, and shootouts and brawls and illegal drinking and all sorts of wild stuff. So it was very interesting to see like this different side of these towns that you've been to, and I think it also would be really interesting to maybe take a trip to this area and then kind of use the book to like find the places or the houses that they mentioned and compare and see what it looks like now. So I think that would be really interesting, that aspect of it. Additionally, I did learn some fun facts. So there's a very famous case in the UP, and I mean, it's wider than just this area. there was a strike, a labor movement. I remember this story because the woman who kind of led the labor movement was 6'2". They specifically call that out, which is very, very tall for a woman. I am 6'1", and I am very, very tall. So a whole inch on top of that, very rare. I can like count on one hand the number of women I've met in my life who are taller than me, so 6'2" is very notable. So she was leading this movement, and she was doing a Christmas party, and there's a lot of people in the Italian hall in town, and someone who they suspect was either against the labor protest or wanted to pull a prank came in and said fire, shouted fire in the crowded building, and then left, and there was a big pile up and people wound up being crushed to death. I think they said like 62 people died. It's a very famous story, and I had always been under the impression that the reason so many people died was because the fire exits opened inward, so when there's a crush of people against it, they can't get the door open. However, this book did set me straight, and that the doors do open outward, which does beg the question why they couldn't be opened if someone had blocked them. They didn't really go into depth there. But they said that the state of Michigan actually had to replace the historical sign with the correct information because even the historical plaque that the state had put up had the incorrect information on. So that was an interesting fun fact that I learned about this that I did not know about. So that was, you do learn some fun facts. I also learned that there were not one, but two cities in the entirety of the UP named Kipling after Rudyard Kipling. So that was also really interesting and not something that I knew. So you pick up some fun facts, but overall this was not my cup of tea. I would give this a 2-star read. I definitely would not have read it if I didn't have to read it for book club, and I will be discussing it further with my book club. But yeah, if you enjoy true crime, if you enjoy frontier history, if you enjoy anything that I just said that sounds interesting, this would be a really good book for you. You might enjoy it. The stories move pretty quick, and it covers a wide range of history, a little under 200 years. So I think this is really, really a good pick for you if anything I said sounds interesting to you. Other than that, everyone, I hope you have a really good day. Thank you.